Good morning and welcome to Dr.Lamba's Awakening Call. Imagine a country, independent, a progressive country, a democratic, established country. In the last 75 years, it has proved its democracy, its freedom, in absolute clear terms. And yet, the whole West, openly, in some cases, hidden in many cases, is attacking it for the simple reason that it is unafraid, that it is able to make its own decisions and is not dictated by the others. The West is, as usual, doing the same thing. BBC makes a two-part documentary that is almost libellous, defamatory, and malicious in nature, and is also committing a contempt of court by being contemptuous of the highest court, the Supreme Court of India. The government bans it, as it should have been banned, and there is a lot of hue and cry. There is a furore. The opposition laps up and says that the freedom is being crushed. An aging, almost senile billionaire, true to his agenda and having a proven track record of being a cheat and dishonest man, criticizes Modi, and that again is used as a weapon by the opposition. And opposition is acting like hyenas lurking around. Why this love for the biased criticism? Now let me put the things in the proper perspective. BBC, we know, has always been anti-India. People are not aware that in 1970, News Bharati was there, and Mrs. Gandhi, I remember, had ordered it to be banned. And for 2 years it was banned in 1970. The purpose of banning was biased and derogatory coverage. This was the first time. Then BBC was expelled from India in 1970. What did BBC do at that time that it was banned from India? Not ED or income tax attacking it, but it was banned. And it was only back in 1971 when the Bangladesh war was started, permission was granted to Mark Tully to come. Then in 1975, these Congress MPs criticized BBC. In 1975, 41 Congress MPs accused BBC of broadcasting notoriously anti-India stories and asked the government not to allow, I'm quoting, not to allow anti-India stories and not to allow BBC to report again from Indian soil. Because BBC had never missed an opportunity to malign India and willfully misrepresented the country. This was Congress. And the same Congress now, when Modi takes an action, is criticizing him. Why this duplicity, hypocrisy, and double-faced attitude? I fail to understand. Maybe you can. When the central government last Friday invoked its emergency powers to direct YouTube and Twitter to remove links to the BBC documentary, which had been selective, and chose only those things which were negative and wrong. Of course, the so-called liberals were happy that this documentary was giving them another chance to shout about the suppression of the freedom of expression. They forgot that 2 times India had thrown BBC out lock, stock and barrel, and 41 Congress MPs had requested the government to take action after that in 1971. Two of those MPs are still alive, they're active. And I called them and asked them, well, why this change? Well, at that time we were in power, now we are not. Is being in power more important than the love for the country, a love for honesty and proper reporting? Now look at the story why India banned BBC in 1970. It's quite interesting. People are not aware. BBC broadcast the UK premiere of Calcutta, a documentary made by acclaimed famous French director Louis Malle. The film shot in and around Calcutta between 1968 and 69 was by all accounts a visually rich, absolutely impressionistic portrait of Bharat's second most populous citizen. And it's also, Calcutta happens to be one of the most intriguing socio-cultural centers. Now, what happens? Malle visits Calcutta in 1967 and then he made this documentary. He had made very good documentaries earlier and movies like Pretty Baby in 1978, Au revoir la Enfance in 1987, Damage in 92, and he came back to India in 1968. After visiting 67, and then he saw Calcutta, and then got busy with a camera in the life of the extensely sprawling Calcutta. Then what he did? Created a sinus visual narrative of the country, and the subject was the streets and the people. Basically, his focus was only on the poverty. It was not on the working class. Naturally, the government of India was not happy, and the Indian High Commission complained about the documentary made against India. The Indian High Commissioner talked to the British Foreign Office, and Foreign Office said, well, we have freedom of expression, we cannot interfere. The Indian High Commission then asked BBC to pull the documentary series from the schedule. They refused to do that. So, BBC was expelled from India by the orders of the governments from the centre. And there was a lot of neo-imperialistic criticism. Mark Tully was the correspondent, the representative, and Ronnie Robson, I remember. We were having drinks in Gymkhana the day, and Mark Tully received a call. There were no phone calls at that time, so the waiter came and said, sir, there's a call from your office. Mark Tully went there, came back, and he said, well, I'm to pack up because we have been ordered to leave within next 15 days. Time was given to them, 15 days to leave India. Then what did India do? They didn't bother. And the opposition joined the government of India in condemning BBC for its criticism of India. And now, look at the attitude of the opposition at that time and opposition at that time. It was very constructive, and that opposition, when it comes in power, continues to be constructive, and that party in power at that time and now opposition is absolutely anti-nationalistic. But this was not the first time BBC had acted against India. In 1961, I was a student of post-graduation, and it was a Goa liberation movement going on. And then they showed Dom Morris burning his Indian passport in protest against India's action in liberating Goa. Dom was a good friend. So I asked Dom, why have you done it? He says, well, look how much West media is praising me. Then in 1965 my brother was AROP, and they were criticized immediately condemning India and showing that Indian army was being defeated while it was winning. 1969, Ahmedabad riots. Are you surprised that there were riots in 1969? It was Congress in power. Surprised. But they were neither forgiven nor forgotten. In 1950s, India had become a key player in non-aligned movement, while Pakistan signed Cento Pact with Britain, US and others. So, the situation changed and BBC started parroting anti-India talk. Now, what happens? In 1954, Stanford University surveyed 42 exchange students from India, and out of 42, 41 said they listened to BBC. So it was concluded in that research, for interviewing 41 students, that BBC was more popular for its objectivity. Look at the sample size. And then the reach of the language, because BBC was broadcasting in Hindi, Bengali, English. Now, when the Cold War started, there was a geopolitical alignment. So Pakistan was against India and it was aligned to Britain and US. In 1971 war, USA had sent nuclear armada to India to threaten India. So opposition, but then imagine, at that time the opposition to the ban was not from the opposition. The opposition to the ban was from the print media. Statesman, Hindustan Times, Indian Express, and all opposed the government because they considered that the selective censorship was a blow to media freedom. Now, BBC re-entered India in late 1971 because the Bangladesh war was on the horizon. And India permitted it to do it because the reporting of the war had to be done. 1971 one came, and in 1975, as I told you, 41 Congress MPs, including Mr. Sharad Pawar, signed the petition to ban BBC and not to allow BBC to report again from the Indian soil, because BBC never missed an opportunity to malign country. And today, those so-called liberals are crying wolf. I'm shocked. Now come to George Soros. He was giving a speech at Munich Security Conference, and midway he touched upon the debate over Adani's business empire and referred to Hindenburg report. Now this seminar, and where he was speaking, has nothing to do with the stock exchange, nothing to do with the government. But this 92-year-old hedge fund manager went on to say that the impact on India was that there will be no investment and the government is being undemocratic. Now, who is this George Soros? Hungarian-born businessman who has covered issues all over, and who, being a Jew, had betrayed Jews in Hitler's time, and he admitted that he got his co-religionists arrested and killed. A man who cannot be honest to his own community. Do you think he can be honest in assessment of politically antagonistic government? Can't be. He mentioned India as an open society which is becoming a closed society. I'll read out what he said. India is an interesting case. It's a democracy. Now here comes. But its leader Narendra Modi is no Democrat. Is he an idiot? He was elected by a great majority 2 times. Then he says inciting violence against Muslims is an important factor in his rise. He maintains close relations with both open and closed societies. India is a member of Quad, which includes Australia, US, Japan, but it buys a lot of oil at steep discount. Doesn't Germany buy oil from there? Doesn't Germany buy gas from there? Isn't there duplicity? You condemn India for buying oil, but you praise Germany, France, and the whole of Europe for buying gas from them. And then he says Modi and business tycoon are close allies. Their fates are intertwined. And so Modi is accused of stock manipulation. Modi is silent. He forgot that the Indian judiciary is looking into it. SEBI is looking into it. CBI is looking into it. Enforcement Directorate is looking into it. This whole thing. And then he says, this Adani's episode will weaken Modi's stranglehold in the federal government and open the push for much needed institution reforms. I might be naive, I fully agree with that. Not only naive but dishonest. But I expect a democratic revival in India. Mr. Soros, revival is there where it is under dictatorship. There was a revival of democracy after emergency. Because democracy at that time had been in a suspended animation. Now, look at his credentials. I showed you how BBC has been anti-India all the time. He was born in Budapest in 1930s, Jewish parents, lived through the country and his family survived. How? By securing false identity papers, concealing their background, concealing identity, and he confirmed in 1998 an interview that the conviction of the confiscation of the Jewish property, he accompanied a Christian official as a godson which concealed his identity. And he betrayed the Jewish community. To show that he was not a Jew, he helped those Jews to be killed. As I said earlier, he who cannot be honest to his own community, to his own ideas, to honesty, how can that man be dependent? But my grouse is not against BBC. They're supposed to do that because the West is essentially against India. And the media is. Look at what Time did, at what New York Times does all the time. I'm not annoyed at what Soros said. This is stupid, it's idiotic. But he has his own agenda. But what is the Indian opposition doing? Why are they behaving like lapdogs of the Western critics in their intense hatred for Modi? That's what pains and hurries. But people of India know the truth. And it's very clear that these rabid, mad, lunatic attacks by the anti-Indian forces abroad will have no impact, even though Modi opposition may try to exploit it as much as possible. Thank you.